my fellow Americans. If you think you know politics, think again. I'm Michael Cohen, and every week on When You Know, we're pulling back the curtain on power, politics, media, and the people making headlines. On my new WABC radio show, you'll hear conversations from names that you know. People like Jerry Falwell Jr., Anthony Scaramucci, Alan Dershowitz, and many, many more. Maybe, just maybe, we'll even hear from the president. No scripts, no spin, just real conversations with people who were in the room where it happened. And trust me, we've got some very big surprises coming. Look, I've spent years at the center of politics, controversy, and power. I know the players, I know the stories, and now I'm bringing you inside. When You Know, Sundays at 5 p.m. on WABC Radio, and When You Know Unleashed, wherever you get your podcasts. Because with me, you never know who's going to show up.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Last night on the Stone Zone, the chairman of the Italian-American Civil Rights League, Mike Crispi, condemned Mayor Zoran Mamdani after his administration released a list of New York City's immigrant enclaves, a map reportedly highlighting dozens of ethnic neighborhoods across New York City while ignoring one of the most important of them all, Little Italy. Mike Crispi said this was not a clerical error. He said it was correctly. He said this was cultural erasure. And he correctly said that Little Italy is sacred ground. It's where Italian immigrants came from nothing, worked hard, opened shops, raised families, built churches, fed the city, and helped make New York what it is today. Well, after that show last night, Mayor Mamdani is in full retreat. Let's listen to the mayor.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Can you please address the controversy that has developed over the city's immigrant enclaves list? Do you believe that there are neighborhoods that were left off that list? And if the city plans to add more, which other neighborhoods do you think should be added?
Yeah. So this map was initially created by the prior administration in 2023. And when we inherited it, we added a few additional neighborhoods. It's clearly not an exhaustive list of the more than 200 ethnic communities that call our city home. And we're going to be making additional changes in the future to reflect that. And that includes adding Little Italy to the map. Oh, Little Italy.
Yeah. And there you have it, the mayor in full retreat. First of all, he threw his predecessor, Eric Adams, under the bus, saying it was really his map. But this is a firsthand demonstration of citizen action. And I think the mayor probably should have also apologized. Proud of the role that we played here in the Stone Zone. And for those who are interested in the Italian-American Civil Rights League, the nonprofit volunteer organization that mobilized very quickly to put heat on the mayor, you can go to iacrl.org. Again, a voluntary nonprofit organization. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump is moving to take out the trash at the Election Assistance Commission after that agency shamefully resisted his push to require proof of U.S. citizenship before voter registration. The White House confirmed that President Trump removed the commission's two Democrat members, Thomas Hicks and Benjamin Hovland. The Republican seats were already vacant after Christy McCormick resigned and Donald Palmer left his seat earlier this year. Now, this commission oversees federal election grants, voting system testing, and the National Voter Registration Form. That form currently tells applicants that it's illegal to falsely claim citizenship, but it does not require documentary proof of citizenship. That's exactly the loophole that President Trump has been trying to close. Democrats, of course, immediately accused the president of politicizing elections, but the real scandal here is that Washington elites think that requiring proof of citizenship to register to vote is somehow controversial. Voting is a sacred right of all American citizens. It should not depend on an honor system, bureaucratic paperwork, or vague assurances from agencies that resist basic safeguards. This is what the Save America Act is all about. Polls show that 97% of Americans agree with the concept that you should be a legal resident of the United States, a citizen of the United States, and have a photo ID in order to vote. The The Supreme Court recently affirmed broad presidential authority to remove officials from independent agency boards, giving President Trump a much stronger legal hand in this very fight. The White House says the president has the right to remove officials not aligned with securing elections and ensuring that every legal vote is counted. That is, of course, my point. We need accountability within the federal bureaucracy. This is not a permanent position isolated from political pressure. President Trump knows that he is that, and he's acting accordingly. If a bureaucrat is unwilling to defend election integrity, they don't belong on the Election Assistance Commission. These positions are not extremism. They're just common sense. If you need identification and proof of eligibility for virtually every aspect of daily life, whether it's buying a pack of cigarettes, getting on an airplane, then it is not unreasonable to require the same proof of citizenship for voter registration at a bare minimum. Meanwhile, Secretary of State Marco Rubio is pushing America's allies to take the threat of violent far-left extremism seriously, including the Antifa-linked networks. According to reports, Secretary Rubio is urging foreign governments to work with the United States on political violence tied to far-left movements, arguing that some groups connected to Antifa operate across borders and should be treated as part of a broader extremist threat. State Department spokesman Tommy Pigott said, "Violent far-left terrorism is not new, but an old threat reemerging with transnational links." He said the administration is focused on activity that meets the definition of terrorism, such as assassinations, kidnappings, threats against U.S. facilities and law enforcement, attacks on critical infrastructure, military personnel, and civilians. In my opinion, this is a long overdue correction. For years, the political class observed these threats from the right while downplaying black-clad militants burning cities, attacking police, threatening citizens, and sabotaging infrastructure. Some European governments are reportedly skeptical, claiming that Antifa is not a major concern compared with Islamist terrorism, organized crime, cyber attack, or other hostile foreign states. Well, perhaps, but I think they're missing the forest for the trees here. A serious government can confront more than one threat at a time. Antifa-linked cells have claimed destructive attacks, including Tesla infrastructure near Berlin, and similar tactics have appeared here in our own country. As long as we have partners in Europe, they must be compelled to take the far-left extremist threat seriously. Otherwise, what is the point of the partnership if they stand unwilling to defend civilization when it matters the most? Secretary Rubio's leadership in this situation is a stark departure from previous regimes that claimed, because of propaganda spread by groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center and the Anti-Defamation League, that Antifa was just an idea, just a concept, not really an organization. Well, then I ask, who pays for the pallets of bricks? Who pays for the flatbed trucks and the buses? Who pays to bail these monsters out of jail on those rare occasions when they are arrested? Antifa is very real, and it's time for us to take it as the terrorist threat that it really is. Meanwhile, serious questions continue to grow around Senator Mitch McConnell's mysterious hospitalization. I think the American people deserve answers as to what may be an establishment conspiracy. New video and eyewitness accounts reportedly show emergency responders taking the senator from Kentucky from his Washington home on a stretcher last month after a call from an unconscious person came through 911. Audio published by an independent journalist indicated that responders were dispatched for a possible cardiac arrest with CPR in progress. That can be heard clearly on the recording. Yet McConnell's office has offered only vague statements saying he was hospitalized and receiving excellent care. A couple weeks later, the public still hadn't been told what happened, what his condition really is, or why one of Kentucky's U.S. senator has been absent for major votes. Now, this is not just an ordinary citizen who's entitled to privacy. This is an 84-year-old senator whose vote affects war powers, spending, judges, and the direction of the country. Republican leaders and insiders now claim that they've spoken with McConnell by phone and that he sounds strong. Count me as skeptical. Their comments seem remarkably limited, carefully worded, and kind of light on details. Why not just have Senator McConnell emerge and give a statement of his own? After years of Washington hiding the true condition of aging leaders, Americans have every right here to be skeptical. We saw it firsthand with Joe Biden. We saw how many people lie blatantly to the masses when it serves their political agenda. With McConnell, we've seen his mental fitness decline precipitously in recent years. Still, he has remained in office to be a sturdy vote against MAGA. On the other hand, if the senator is incapacitated, or should he pass, his appointment would be filled, his vacancy would be filled by a Democrat governor. Kentucky voters, American people deserve to know right now whether Senator McConnell is capable of serving. And if he's not, he should resign and be replaced with someone else who could vote affirmatively on the Save America Act before it is too late. I correct myself. He actually would be appointed by a Republican governor. Meanwhile, federal authorities have charged 8 men in an alleged terror plot targeting President Donald Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, Elon Musk, and other senior figures during the UFC Freedom 250 event at the White House in June. So it wasn't a conspiracy theory. A federal grand jury in Ohio returned a 2-count indictment charging the defendants with conspiring to provide materials and support to terrorists, conspiring to commit murder on federal property, and conspiring to kill federal officials. All of those, of course, are capital crimes. Investigators were reportedly alerted to the threat on June 10th, just 4 days before the UFC event. 7 suspects were quickly arrested before any attacks could take place, thank God. The final suspect, 21-year-old Chandler Skaggs, who prosecutors say was assigned to act as a sniper, was arrested just this past week in West Virginia. Prosecutors say the plot began forming in May, with the group gathering cash, firearms, ammunition, explosives, drones, protective gear, medical supplies, and communication devices in order to take out key administration figures at the UFC fight on the White House grounds. They allegedly used platforms including Signal, Discord, TikTok, Instagram, and others to coordinate their diabolical plan. Authorities say the group held extreme left-wing, anti-government conspiracy beliefs and wanted to take down the United States to fulfill their sick ideological fantasies. This is exactly why law enforcement must treat political violence as a serious national security threat. There have been plenty of radicalized nut jobs fed hysteria by one of the two parties, and the mainstream media over a decade now who want to, as the former FBI director put it, 86-47. No, we cannot let the terrorists win. The Trump administration, federal agents, and local law enforcement partners did tremendous work in stopping a potential massacre before it could take place. The radical left does not believe in free speech. Their Marxist ideology is anathema to Americanism. If Joe McCarthy was wrong, it's because he didn't go far enough. Meanwhile, the FBI under Director Kash Patel says the Bureau has arrested 113 active foreign spies, making a major escalation in America's counterintelligence fight under the Trump administration. According to the FBI director, the arrests are aimed at keeping American technology at home and protecting U.S. defense secrets from hostile regimes. The FBI also said it forced the removal of 62 Chinese spies in 2026 alone, dealing a serious blow to the Chinese Communist Party operations inside the United States. You see, for years, China has targeted American military secrets, trade secrets, universities, defense contractors, and dissidents living on U.S. soil. A House Homeland Security report found that the CCP espionage cases spanned across 20 states, including schemes involving sensitive military information, stolen intellectual property, and intimidation of Chinese dissidents. Recent cases include a former Navy sailor sentenced to more than 16 years in prison for selling information about the USS Essex to Chinese intelligence, as well as a U.S. citizen who pled guilty to acting as an agent of China. The FBI is moving aggressively against these cyber threats, including North Korean phishing operations and Chinese-backed internet domains targeting Americans with security clearances. At the same time, FBI Director Patel says the FBI is treating cartels like foreign terrorist threats, with roughly 4,800 cartel members having been arrested. I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to The Stone Zone, and we'll be back with more on the other side.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Perhaps the first man who should be prosecuted, convicted, and locked up for their role in the anti-Trump conspiracy that was Arctic Frost is former special counsel Jack Smith. U.S. Senator from Iowa Chuck Grassley, chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, is raising serious questions about Smith's prosecution team after messages reportedly showed classified material were handled carelessly by the very people prosecuting President Trump over his handling of classified material. You can't make this stuff up. According to Grassley, internal messages from Smith's team indicate that a secure facility used to review sensitive information was left open overnight and possibly longer. In one exchange, a prosecution team member asked who had opened the facility. Another replied that no one had opened it because no one had closed it the day before. A second set of messages reportedly showed that the team used classified materials and sent them to an unidentified person without confirming if that person had a need to know or a security clearance. This is stunning hypocrisy. If you think about it, remember, they were raided Mar-a-Lago, the president's home in South Florida, on the pretext that he had illegally held on to classified material. Yet under the Presidential Records Act, they of course knew that the president had the full authority to not only have, but maintain and declassify any material he wished. Jack Smith's office was prosecuting Trump for this alleged mishandling of classified material, while according to these records, members of his own team were mishandling classified materials themselves. Grassley called it another example of the two-tier justice system, and he asked the acting Attorney General, Todd Blanche, for more records, including whether the unsecured facility contained materials connected to the Trump case. The Justice Department says it takes classified information seriously and will review whether protocols were violated. We've certainly heard that song and dance before. Now there must be swift action to show that these lawbreakers are not involved in incompetence but were malicious, and their hypocrisy and treason simply won't be tolerated. This goes far beyond just classified documents. This, in my opinion, is about equal justice under the law, and whether Washington, D.C. elitists will ever be compelled to play by the same rules they impose on every other citizen. Until they are prosecuted and convicted, there'll be nothing stopping Jack Smith and the rest of the deep state subverters from repeating these same ops the first chance they get. There's no question that the Russian collusion hoax was the greatest single abuse of power in which the full authority of the U.S. government was used for strictly political reasons. The second greatest dirty trick of all time would have to be Operation Arctic Frost. Remember when they asked Joe Biden whether he was concerned about a rematch with Donald Trump? In that telling moment, he grinned and said no, because we're not going to let him run. Joe Biden himself blurted it all out. You're in the Stone Zone. I'm Roger Stone. We got plenty more politics for you on the other side, so whatever you do, don't go away.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back into the Stone Zone. On the morning of Thursday, July 9th, in Palm Beach, Florida, what was formerly Palm Beach International Airport officially became known as President Donald J. Trump International Airport. In classic Trump style, the Commander-in-Chief's iconic 757, known as Trump Force One, touched down, making history as the first aircraft to land at the permanently renamed President Donald J. Trump International Airport, which will forever carry the name and airport code DJT. This renaming is completely unprecedented and truly historic. It marks the first time a sitting president has had an airport named after him, but why not? The rebrand was supported by the people of Florida and proceeded despite pushback and lawsuits from critics who raised concerns about costs and described the initiative as a political stunt. But I've seen the new signage, the fresh logos, the new uniforms, and the marketing materials are being implemented in phases to complete the transition while keeping operations at the airport running smoothly. The Trump Organization provided a perpetual license for the project, and the airport code transition was integrated efficiently for pilots, airlines, and passengers. On board Air Force One for the historic landing was Congressman Byron Donalds and his wife Erica, along with Eric Trump, Donald Trump Jr., and other supporters. Eric Trump said it best: "There's no person who's done more for Florida and our country, and no one more deserving than this incredible honor." It's not incidental that President Trump has endorsed Congressman Byron Donalds, Republican congressman from Naples, for the gubernatorial nomination here in the state of Florida, and polls show Donalds is running away with that contest, leading by more than 50 points. He also notably now has $90 million in the bank that he's raised for his campaign. The renaming of the airport, of course, celebrates the administration's strong economy, secure borders, and restored respect and love for America, achievements that Florida proudly recognizes. The airport will continue to welcome millions of travelers drawn to the sun, golf, opportunities, and positioning DJT Airport as a gateway to the American dream. Travelers arriving at the facility now encounter the new identity upon landing. Looking ahead, airport officials will continue rolling out additional signage, branding, and operational changes. Other U.S. airports named after presidents includes those honoring Abraham Lincoln, Theodore Roosevelt, Dwight Eisenhower, John F. Kennedy, Gerald Ford, Ronald Reagan, and of course, George H.W. Bush. The implementation has followed FAA procedures to ensure safety and continuity in air traffic management and passenger processing. Personally, I can't wait to at Trump International Airport. Meanwhile, the Department of Health and Human Services is proposing an injury table under the Countermeasures Injury Compensation Program, which handles claims related to COVID-19 vaccinations. The table would list vaccination-related injuries that government officials agree are supported by strong medical and scientific evidence, along with the time frame in which symptoms must appear. Undersecretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who polls show, by the way, is the most popular member of the Trump cabinet, HHS says it is restoring transparency and accountability, giving Americans accurate information about both the benefits and the known risks of medical countermeasures. To me, this is long overdue. For years, Americans were told to take the shot and stop asking questions. Trust the experts. Trust the science, we were told. But when people reported serious injuries, including some cases sudden death, they were ignored, dismissed, or called nuts. The claims were buried in a rigged compensation system designed to protect Big Pharma that rejected roughly 99% of claims. Through June, only 60 COVID vaccination injury claims had reportedly been compensated, mostly involving myocarditis, with average payouts around $4,000, except for a few slightly larger awards. Watchdog groups representing vaccination-injured Americans argue other serious conditions deserve fair review. No government entity should pressure people into taking a medical product and then abandon those who were harmed by it. Those who chose to take the shot had the right to do so, but those who chose not to also had the right not to do so. After all, this was a product that had not gone through clinical trials, and the makers of whom had no legal liability. Transparency, compensation, and accountability are not misinformation, contrary to what so-called medical experts may be saying. After the excesses of the COVID-19 lockdown, President Trump was reelected to change the public health status quo. That's exactly what RFK Jr. is doing, and now it's time for those who've been injured by dangerous experimental vaccinations to receive justice. Meanwhile, the Justice Department under Donald Trump is reversing another Biden-era attack on American energy. On July 7th, the Department of Justice said the Biden administration's restriction on oil and gas leasing in northern Alaska's Arctic region violated federal law. The department is now asking the court to dismiss lawsuits brought by Alaska and its Industrial Development Authority after reaching a settlement over the dispute. At issue is the coastal plain of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, where Congress set aside 1.5 million acres for potential oil and gas development. In 2017, Congress directed the federal government to move forward with responsible energy leasing in those lands. But Alaska argued that the Biden administration sabotaged that process with restrictions so severe that real development became economically and practically impossible. This is at a time, of course, when we are struggling for energy independence. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche said that the Biden leasing program improperly limited Alaska's energy potential with unreasonable regulation. The settlement effectively restores the law and supports American energy independence, undoing Biden administration policies that made America weaker, less prosperous, and more dependent on hostile nations for our energy. The Trump administration's decision is a huge victory for national security, jobs, lower energy costs, and the future of Alaska's economy. Governor Mike Dunleavy had argued these resources would strengthen the Alaska Permanent Fund and benefit future generations. On the same day, the Department of Justice also settled a decades-old lawsuit over a failed federal port expansion in Anchorage, Alaska, agreeing to pay Alaska $180 million to rebuild the Don Young Port, named for a veteran congressman, who actually was a friend of mine, which serves most of the state's population. Under the visionary leadership of President Donald Trump, America is building, drilling, and correcting the failures of President Joe Biden and the Democrats. Meanwhile, a new Gallup poll is challenging one of the establishment's favorite myths that mass immigration automatically helps prosperity and strengthens the free market. According to Gallup's June survey, Americans are more likely to say immigration hurts job opportunities for U.S.-born workers than helps them. They're even more negative when it comes to the question of housing, with 40% saying that immigration worsens housing availability and costs, compared with just 23% who say that it actually helps it. This matters because working Americans are living with the consequences of mass illegal migration and see its disastrous effects firsthand, while Koch-funded academics and ivory towers spew free market slop to justify the unjustifiable. Basic common sense dictates that as more people are competing for the same homes or the same jobs, it means higher rent prices, and more unemployment. More workers competing for the same jobs means weaker bargaining power and lower wages as well. So this isn't free market prosperity. This is government-managed labor inflation for the benefit of corporations, landlords, and the political elites. Unfortunately, for a long time, Republicans bought into this dogma for far too long, actually, before President Donald Trump came down that golden escalator, kind of snapped the GOP out of it. The pro-immigration lobby wants America to believe the falsehood that endless migration fills workforce gaps and boosts tax revenues. But now we're seeing the fruits, and they are sour indeed. We've crowded schools, strained services, unaffordable housing, and American workers passed over for cheaper labor. Stopping the flood of illegal migration will help bring down home prices and make family formation possible again for younger Americans. Immigration policy should serve American citizens first. The idea that foreign labor is necessary for America to thrive is erroneous, to say the least. We need a fair market in this country, one that does not require flooding the country with cheap labor to maximize corporate profits while taxpayers absorb the cost. Meanwhile, no surprise here, a Minneapolis daycare owner has pled guilty in federal court to wire fraud and conspiracy to defraud the United States after stealing millions of dollars from programs meant to actually help children and families. Fahima Egg Mahmood, former CEO of Future Leaders Early Learning Center near George Floyd Square, admitted to submitting fraudulent claims through Minnesota's childcare assistance program and the federal child nutrition program tied to massive Feeding Our Futures scandal. Federal prosecutors say Mahmood stole more than $4.6 million by filing roughly 13,000 fraudulent child care reimbursement claims between 2022 and 2025. She also was accused of falsely claiming her daycare center was serving huge numbers of meals to children, including submitting paperwork saying the center served 2 meals a day to 1,000 children 7 days a week. It was all completely fraudulent. Between January and July 2021, the daycare center received more than $850,000 of your tax dollars in federal nutrition funds. Now, prosecutors say only a fraction actually went to food. The case drew renewed attention after the young independent journalist Nick Shirley featured the daycare center in a viral investigation into suspicious Minnesota daycare operations. State officials later conducted checks and Future Leaders closed in January. This is exactly why independent journalism matters and why we ask people to listen to shows like The Stone Zone. While bureaucrats fail to protect taxpayer dollars, citizen reporters helped expose what government oversight missed. Nearly 100 people have now been charged in the Feeding Our Future scandal in Minnesota. So I'd say that the lesson is clear. Public benefit should help the vulnerable, not enrich fraudsters gaming the system. The Trump administration is now closing all of these scams down nationwide, and not a moment too soon. The era of defrauding the taxpayers is coming to a swift end. Meanwhile, the Federal Reserve is facing quite a backlash after appointing Xbox CEO Asha Sharma to a new task force on productivity and jobs, just as Microsoft is under fire for laying off American workers while receiving approval to hire thousands of foreign H-1B visa employees. Sharma's Xbox division announced 1,600 layoffs this week, part of Microsoft's broader plan to cut 4,800 jobs. Seems like an unlikely person to appoint to a task force on productivity and job creation, no? At the same time, federal data shows that Microsoft had approved earlier this year to hire another 2,200 HB1 workers. So no, Sharma has been selected to advise the Federal Reserve on jobs. That's not just tone deaf, it's actually unacceptable. At a time when Vice President J.D. Vance and the Trump administration are investigating H-1B visa abuse and fighting to put American workers first, the Fed should not be elevating executives associated with mass layoffs and foreign labor pipelines. Microsoft insists the cuts were based on business needs, not visa status, and says that some H-1B employees were also affected. But the bigger picture here is corporate giants are cutting U.S. jobs, importing cheaper labor, then getting rewarded with prestigious government influence in the aftermath. Sharma is not the type of person who should be giving advice on employment to the nation's central bank. She should be removed from this task force as soon as possible, in my view. The Federal Reserve needs advisors who understand American workers, not executives from big tech companies who are guilty of replacing them. America First means American jobs for American workers, not lectures from globalists who profit while American families lose their paychecks. Thanks for joining us today in the Stone Zone. When we come back, Argentina's President Javier Milei is taking another page from Donald Trump. Milei and I became friends, believe it or not, over what used to be Twitter, now it's X, when he sent me a favorable direct message, and that bloomed into a friendship. Little did I know that the eccentric congressman would end up as one of the most successful presidents in all of Latin America. Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone, and my friend Javier Milei will be right back with more politics on the other side.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Argentina's President Javier Milei is actually a very good friend of mine. As I indicated, we met online. He was a congressman, thought to be an eccentric, but a free market economist. And I remember very specifically when he asked me whether I thought he should shave his Elvis-style sideburns, and I said, absolutely not. That, and of course, brandishing a buzzsaw and saying that he was going to cut government became like a trademark for his incredibly successful campaign. Now, President of Argentina, Javier Milei, is taking another page from President Trump's playbook. And this one cuts straight to the heart of runaway government spending. Milei announced that he wants Argentina to adopt a shutdown-style mechanism similar to the United States, where government spending stops when budget authority runs out. Milei believes that if politicians do not pass a budget, they shouldn't just keep spending anyway. See, that would be a major break from Argentina's current system, where government can continue operating under old budget rules with adjustments made by the executive branch. Milei says that has helped fuel decades of fiscal abuse, inflation, and political fraud against law-abiding Argentines. This is part of Milei's broader reform package aimed at shrinking government, protecting the independence of Argentina's central bank, stopping politicians from printing money to finance spending, deregulating markets, and restructuring taxes. Milei, of course, has long argued that reckless spending and money printing destroyed Argentina's economy, and now he wants legal and even criminal penalties for using currency creation to fund government deficits. A man of Milei's talents would certainly thrive with a government shutdown mechanism because he wouldn't be shy about playing hardball when it comes to public spending. Argentina's socialist and big government establishment have produced runaway inflation, poverty, corruption, and general national decline. Milei knows the problem, and he's willing to be bold to deliver a solution. His alignment with Trump is, by the way, no accident. I put the two men in touch with each other. These leaders are cut from the same cloth, and both understand the basic truth that nations do not become prosperous by empowering bureaucrats. They become prosperous by limiting government, protecting markets, and preventing the takers from looting the makers. That's exactly what President Milei is attempting to do by wisely putting the shutdown provision into the functioning of the Argentine government, and already you have seen the results of the austerity and the tax relief he's brought to his country. Meanwhile, a new report exposing another ugly example of education fraud, this time in California. School officials stealing money meant for children and using it to fund luxury lifestyles. According to a report from the State Financial Officers Foundation and Open the Books, two Southern California school leaders separately stole about $20 million from their public school systems. In Orange County, former Magnolia Elementary School District Fiscal Services Director Jorge Armando Contreras was charged with altering school checks and funneling $16.7 million into his own bank account. Investigators say he spent the money on luxury homes, a BMW, designer clothing, expensive tequila, as well as expensive jewelry. Federal agents found cash hidden in a mini fridge, I guess that's what they mean when they say cold cash, and designer bags at his home. He was sentenced in 2024 to 6 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $16.7 million. In Los Angeles, Community Preparatory Academy charter school leader Janice Bucknor stole more than $3 million in taxpayer funds for travel, restaurants, shopping, private school tuition for her children, and more than $220,000 in Disneyland-related expenses. She received probation, was ordered to pay $2.5 million in restitution. Anyone who thinks that all of this fraud, when it comes to federal spending, is not going to be an issue in the 2026 election doesn't understand American politics. These cases involving embezzlement, fake invoices, inflated enrollment, bid rigging and kickbacks, and the corruption, all of which you find in the blue states and the big blue cities, will be a major issue in 2026. You heard about it here first in the Stone Zone. Thank you for joining us in the Stone Zone today. We try to bring you the cutting-edge politics that you won't hear anyplace else. Until tomorrow, God bless you and Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?